Hello. In our tutorial today, Ian and I are trying to look at how can we slow things down with children so that things have time to mean something to them. So we've been holding a discussion about Ian's original model of drama, which he's now comparing to the model I'm trying to demonstrate to him.
Yes. I think that it has been difficult for me because the image that I had of drama before I started on this, I guess was born out of the experience that I've had. But really, I'd seen drama as being something that was packaged into a time in the day or in the week that required people who were had particular abilities to do it, you know, who were seen to be specialists or talents in that area, and provided a drama experience. Now, I saw that as being very valuable for some children who didn't shine in the classroom or who needed that time.
Yes, you mean in their academic work?
Yes, they were very obviously got an awful lot out of that experience.
Yes.
But I didn't see that I had the skills to do that. I saw that as being something for people who were more talented than I.
Yes.
And I'm now starting to have to think in terms of drama in the classroom. And for me, drama was, up to now, has been a sort of packaged thing that went on once a week or something and then was finished. Went on very quickly for half an hour.
Yes, and the children sort of felt they'd done a play.
Yes.
Yes, and I must confess that sometimes children who work that way in school, normally, will say to me, when are we going to do the play? Because though they're, in a way, pleased with what we're doing, they've got this other model in their minds that, well, when are we going to stand up and act it?
Yeah. Yes.
And it seems to me one of the things you're saying is that it could happen quite fast. If it could be finished in half an hour, this could happen quite fast. And of course, frequently that's what makes other teachers who don't feel so talented perhaps feel, well, it is a bit of a mess on. I wouldn't like you to think that you can't use the hall, by the way, because there are times when a procession is needed, or times when something rather large, requiring space, as in a ceremony.
Yes.
When, in fact, a bit of extra space can give a very, very rich experience to children. So it's more a case of which circumstance suits best what I'm trying to help the people to learn.
Yes, I think what I'm learning is that drama happens when it doesn't need to be active. It doesn't need to be people jumping up and down or making processions or whatever. It happens sitting at desks.
Yes, because the identification process of wearing other people's shoes, living other people's lives, has to be as much in the head and in the symbolic ways in which things are organised and considered, as in the expressive mode of the body showing it, you see. And I think this is where the confusion has often arisen. Because let's face it, the models that adults meet do look as if they're always in the expressive mode. They go to the theatre and the actors are moving around.
Yes.
The children watch television, and they may go to the theatre as well, but they see actors moving around. So when children say, can we do a play, Mrs. Heathcote? I know very well that they have this image in their mind that every one of us will have a part.
Yes.
Because they watch a thriller on television, more and more the midnight movie, you know, when they're only about this size. And of course, one of them's going to be King Kong, and somebody else is going to be something else, and he's going to be Tarzan, and she's going to be this. And they've got this sort of image, rather like children draw at first, the outside of the house, and a door, and the windows. Now, that is where they're at. And you see, frequently they will come along and say, if last night's midnight movie, you know, was Dracula, and they'll say, can we do Dracula? And I always say, oh, yes. But then I realise our two images at this point are going in totally different directions, because they have been thrilled by Dracula. But I have to create in the circumstance how it is to confront Dracula. Now that is a totally different experience, you see.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of my time thinking, how can I get from what we'll call the house box image of let's all quickly do it and finish and get the story through, to holding the episodes to get a bit deeper into some sort of understanding that it's more scary.
Yeah, right.
Because they still want to be scared by Dracula that they saw last night, you see. Now, the way I tend to see it, and this sounds a bit rigid, that whenever you actually do something with your body in the expressive mode, we live our lives by our acts. We're always engaged in tasks. Even if I'm sitting down doing this, this is what I'm doing. You can't not do, right?
Yep.
So I do. That's what they're volunteering to do, Dracula. Because is what I want to try and get them to consider. What's motivating me to do it? The next stage down, and you know, it does sound a bit compartmentalised. I do this because I have an investment. And in our lives, we always do things because of an investment. Now, the investment may be, I'm invested in not wanting to do this, but I know I better hard. It doesn't always have to be I like doing it. And the next one is, where did this doing come from in your life? Why do you do it like that? Somewhere, something has made you do in that way with that kind of investment. So here we might say, which models have somehow developed this doing in you?
Yes.
And finally below that, seems to me, if I am invested in this, it must be because this is how I think life should be. Now I'll give you an example, I won't write all that. If there's a piece of rubbish, I'll have to find a piece of rubbish. If I see a piece of rubbish, especially if it's on the floor, this is what I do. I pick up the rubbish. Because this has a place, and it shouldn't be here, it should be somewhere else. My investment is in it because it can be recycled. If I dispose it somewhere, it will now go somewhere else, and I don't see it as waste. It is inconsistent with this, but it can go somewhere else, and I hope it will be recycled. My model for this in my life, and this is where we tend to think of ourselves as private people, I was taught you don't waste anything because it had to be like that in my childhood. And I find a lot of problems with modern throwaway society for obvious reasons. And it's no good me trying to stop the world and get off, and it's no good me telling my daughter she shouldn't go and get a new vest till the old one's worn out because we're in a different world. So I have to watch my tongue with children, but my models are use it for something else. So you still see me making vests into dusters and this, that and the other. Because that's how I think the world should be. Now, when I'm working with children, that's what I'm trying to get at. I'll spend any amount of time doing, as long as they feel comfortable in the expressive mode. If they don't feel comfortable in the expressive mode, I'll work in some of the modes we've been looking at in other tutorials. Let's draw it. Let's tell somebody about it, and so on. I won't necessarily ask you to act it. So I only get on to doing when the self-spectator doesn't mind being stared at. And I always see all the other doings as leading me towards that, because that's when it will actually happen to us all. But all this I'm trying to get below. So you see, if we were doing Dracula,
Yeah.
I would start on, you know, Dracula must have had a terrible life, really. You see, it must have been caused to do that because, and I'm trying to get down into this plane. Now, this is what slows things down.
Yes. Yeah.
This is why you can't do a half-hour lesson on Dracula and get the play done. What you can do is get a feeling of being around Dracula and just sort of getting just a little inch into what made him like that. But however, I may be still at the level where I have to attract the children. So you see, I might have all sorts of gory images, keeping them attracted, promising them the Dracula they thought they would get, whilst trying to get into because. So you see, I might say, when I think of Dracula, it's his teeth that worry me. And actually, I've never seen Dracula, except, you know, now and again you come upon him on the electricity board. They had a sort of Dracula man, didn't they? And so it's this, can I get a bit into because? Now, you see, a fair number of people, if they get into drama too early in the expressive mode, they can't ask because by then the children are busy being Dracula. And to get to because is real hard. So sequencing comes into this. If they say, can we do Dracula, what's the exciting moment I can get into Dracula that I do first?
Right.
Now, you see, if a very excited class says, can we do Dracula, because last night he was on telly, I might say, I'll tell you what I'm interested in is, did he ever sleep? Did he? And I genuinely don't know if Dracula ever slept. I don't know if sleep was programmed into him, you know. Shall we, let's all just try sleeping Draculas. I don't expect him to lie on the floor. I don't want that kind of doing. But when he's asleep, because I can get to, because he's waiting, or something like that, does that make a tiny little bit of sense? Now, of course, if you are programmed in your mind that you've got the school hall Friday mornings and your drama happens there and the children have come up through that system, it might be wise to stick to it, but take your paper with you and gradually wean them back from the hall. So their expectation gradually is not of, oh, let's all dash about. That space is horrendous for some children to deal with.
Yes.
They almost have to run and charge in it.
Well, that's what
you
you
know,
see
like
happening,
dogs let loose on moor tops, you know. And I'm sure you will have seen it there, yes, yes. So that's one of the things I say to myself. The thing that will help slow it is because. Now, I have a horrible image. And I sort of think, Dorothy, remember, never do this. It's when little juniors are being Luddites as modern kids charging up to cripple mill machinery. And I'm horrified by the wrong image, that that's what they think it was about. Charging in sometimes in costume. So I always see Luddites when, you know, when you were talking about the hall. I think, oh dear, what is it teaching the children? Because until you can get down here in Luddites, you better not. You better not. And the second mistake, of course, is dressing them up. So the clothes they're wearing makes them think this is what Luddites did. Having grown up among mill machinery, that's my horror, you see, that no way should it be like that. The Battle of Hastings is not pulling out a sword and firing arrows and so on. The Battle of Hastings might just be, my wife gave me this cloak clasp, and tomorrow I must fight for her. And if I can't get there, I don't want to know. And this is all I can do.
Yes, it's
Try and
getting
get
into
there.
a much deeper level.
That's right. But of course people think it's gloomy. But it isn't gloomy. It isn't gloomy if before the Battle of Hastings they say, can we do the Battle of Hastings? And I say, yes, because we can always do what you want. My way, for a bit, you see. Now, this is called teacher interference, and it is not approved of, you know, in drama to a great extent. Teacher interference is all right in the serious matters. But in drama, there's this thing about it that you don't... They should have their play. Well, I do not agree. I agree it should be ours. And for a little time, to help you get a model that's got a bit of motive in it, I'll interfere. Now, Paul Freire says something I think is very important. And if anybody's worth admiring as an educator, it's Paul Freire, isn't it? You see, he says, every kind of education has a certain moment which I call the inductive moment. The moment when the educator cannot wait for students to initiate their own forward progress into an idea or an understanding, and the teacher must do it. If students spontaneously keep moving their critical study forward, why not? Applaud them when they do it. But there are moments when students do not start their own development, and the educator must begin it. And do you know what is the difference between a liberating educator and a domesticating educator? It's that while the liberating educator starts assuming the responsibility of being inductive, he or she looks for the process to overcome the inductive moment, to transform it into a camaraderie. That is a moment undertaken by students themselves and not by the teacher. Now, I will induct. I reckon I'm paid to induct. But I'm watching because it's a laboratory for when they can take over. It will not be my Dracula. It will be their Dracula influenced by my interference. But I'm trying all the time to give them their Dracula newly possible, if that makes a small sense. Now, I got the feeling that though you'd seen this other model, you were a bit bothered by it as well, because you weren't as talented as these people who seemed to be able to go down.
Yes.
Now, there are certain safeguards that one can give people, so I'll try to give you a safeguard. We realise, or I'm assuming we agree then, that this is one of the ways we're hoping to get depth, and that any teacher is going to have to take children through these levels. You'll not get to attention if you haven't attracted them in some way.
Yeah.
And you won't get any investment and interest if you can't help them pay attention, and so on and so on and so on. And one recognises that children will get obsessed in different kinds of lessons and with different kinds of areas and subjects. A way of getting a kind of control over things, if you feel they might run amok as you try to get a bit deeper, is to, I use Hall for this. He's a sociologist, and I find him ever so useful. I'll have to just explain how it works. He divides culture into various areas, and he is saying that culture is always moving in the way we are culturally behaving, and when something is largely unrecognised by people in the social events, he calls this the culture operating at a formal level. That is, we haven't even noticed we do it that way. That's the way it's always been done. This is the sensible way to do it, and anybody that would ever change it would be crazy. So you've got your formal. And formality imposes controls, you see. It tells you your parameters, you know exactly where you can go. I mean, a formal thing in my culture, I would say, is I never try to go where the money is in the bank. It never dawns on me that I could get past the barrier, knock somebody down and take the money. Now, some people have done that. The result is now, we've noticed it, So it's no longer quite so formal. It's formal for me because I still accept it as a rule. But now, to impose the rule, we've got all this bulletproof glass, all these bells and these notices that this is camera controlled or whatever it is. That's because some people have chosen to disobey the formality, you know.
Right.
So if I go into a store, I obey the formal rules that I think still exist. And in a big supermarket, I realise that the parameters have widened a lot more, you see.
Yes.
Now, if a circumstance is operating in such a way that we can question the rule, but we don't really know how to deal with it ourselves, we go to experts, and the experts deal with it. Lawyers are an example of this. The court works, and it sounds a bit funny, it works informally, because as long as you obey the rules of who knows what to do when,
Yes.
I can go and see a solicitor. I have rights. It's my formal right to have a solicitor, but I couldn't cope with it myself. So he speaks for me. Now, some people can now say, I'll deal with my own case. I won't have a solicitor. But that's been a long time, and not a lot do it.
Mm.
So at the informal mode, you go to an expert. At the formal mode, there's a rule you don't even realise is happening. The informal mode, you realise the rule, so you go to the expert to help you deal with it. The third level is when it's moved in society, in culture, technical, that everybody does it the way they think. I can deal with this, you see. Now, driving is a case in point here.
Mm.
In America, I was interested what an amazing variety of weddings you could have. You could get married anywhere, up in a spacecraft, you know, you name it, you could do it. People can choose their own system. Now, you can see that when culture is operating at a technical mode, there is enormous responsibility laid on the individual. And the people who won't obey the laws that everybody else expects, like, don't interfere with me and I won't interfere with you, this is when society runs into horrendous problems. Because this demands everybody has a social sense, has a sense that other people matter as well as me,
Right.
that everybody has empathy to understand how it must feel if I do this to you, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So the more we become technical, and society's always doing it, it's always moving, and then it gets back to being formal again in another way. But if you can recognise it, it's no longer formal. It's only formal if it's so natural. That's the way it must be, surely. You see?
Mm.
Now, in drama, what I tend to say is, can this class handle itself? Are the people in this class able to cope with what I'm asking of them in Dracula in such a way that everybody can get a good time out of it and think? And if they can't, I set my drama so they need an expert.
Right.
And I'm usually the expert just at the beginning. I'm trying to not be as soon as possible, but I'm the inductor of the moment that Friera's talking about, because I don't want them to fail, and I don't want the drama to run amok because some individuals can't handle it. It puts an enormous pressure on 35 people to cooperate. I mean, even committees can't do it in universities, for goodness sake, and they're all sitting down, usually.
Mm.
If I think they won't even handle it at that level, I'll put it up to here. There's a rule that has to operate. I'll obey it, they'll obey it. So I'll try and invent one for Dracula if I can. At the technical mode, Dracula's the vampire, isn't he? I'm just suddenly realising, am I in the right place? Dracula's the vampire. At the technical mode, we might all have to go through the cemetery, trying to find where Dracula's grave is, you see. Now, I'm relying on them all to appreciate that probably silence would be quite useful. Probably surprising him would be rather important, not letting him know we're coming. Probably not interfering with anybody else, plucking their hair out, plaiting it, pulling their feet, you know, the sort of things that go on. So I'm making certain assumptions. If I look at them and I think, no, that's asking a bit too much. The informal would be, if you can persuade me you need the key to the cemetery, I'll let you in. Mind, I'm a difficult person to persuade. And what's more, I'll show you which grave to go to, then you'll be safe. But you'll have to persuade me. Now what I've done is I've limited the behaviours to persuading me, not all scattering round the graveyard. Is that making sense to you?
Yeah.
At the formal mode, it would be when the moon is at the full, the first one may enter. It is not me, it's the moon. It's got to be full moon. Technically, we'll agree the moon will tell us when. Does that make sense? Now you can do that with every single circumstance of a social nature. And you're interfering, not by saying, right, you lot can't behave, so you're going to do it this way. What you're saying is, the way they're talking to you, whatever we're planning, we could be planning to build a cathedral or bake a loaf or whatever it is, a group of people. As you watch, you can see, is their eye contact good? Do they look at you or do they nudge one another and hope you don't notice? Or make sure you do notice they're nudging one another. At that point, I think, no, mate. My questions move, my negotiations move slightly up here. So you see, if we're going to bake a loaf, you know, and poison it for Dracula back to have it, you know, I just slightly move up. Hang on a minute, I think we'd better check if the oven's okay. I'll just go and see if the man will let us use the oven.
Right.
That's all I've done. We're still baking a loaf, but I've shifted it. There's an authority here. We'll have to please. You can't deny that authority, you see. If I think that's not going to work either, they're too bold. They're all still, you know, sort of trying it on with me. Formal. So it may well be, and I have to invent very fast, of course, and it's harder to do without the kids than it is with the kids. A formality might well be that the oven is not available today, or they've got wind of it, and they're not going to let us have it. But the thing's in my mind, and I'm moving. As soon as that works, for example, the moon says, the first one may go. Wait within the gate. And they will. You know, because the moon is what we're dealing with. When we're all through the gate, I might try it here again. Can you see where the man is with the key? If they still can't handle it, back to the moon. Because you'll know straight away in their response. That is a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Now, another problem that I think we can solve a bit, where's my duster gone? Here we are. You've got that clear. There are certain areas of culture that are all social, that make it easy for you, no matter what they say, Dracula, you know, whatever it might be. You can immediately set it into a domain of action. Now, when Hall divides culture, he has fancy sociological terms like territoriality, time, because culture is divided. One whole aspect of culture is territoriality, as we know. Another is our sense of time. What is time to us? Is it punctuality? And so on. I've made it simpler for myself, because I've made it all into action words. Now, this is what I go on when children say, can we do Dracula? So that I know I'll get it into here. I say, shall it be Dracula in terms of work? Shall we be working at something? Another aspect, shall it be Dracula in the context of worship? He is evil, he must be overcome. There are certain ceremonies that will do it. Work, worship. Shall it be Dracula in terms of war? Enemies. Courage. Arm ourselves. I'll write it as learning. All cultures have to deal with learning. How shall we learn that which must be known? War, I always have to invent these like the wheel. War, worship, work, learning, health. What is the medication available? What do we regard as sensible, sanity, healthful, and so on? Now, there are about 13 of these. Law is another one. If you want the whole list, I can rattle it off a bit. Family is another. The way we rear our children, the way we bond within a certain grouping and groupings and so on. Another one is records. How do we keep the memories? I mean, look at now, the memories are on TV. I mean, the tribal memories are now so processed through technology. It is fantastic. In my lifetime, how we've moved from written records to all these stored memories. And further back it is the teller of the story, the memory. It goes right back to the kunars, the priests and so on. So you can span all time. I don't know if this is making sense.
So you could work in any one of those areas?
Any one of those areas will work with Dracula. We've got embellishment, the urge to decorate, whether it's cathedrals, you know, whatever it is. How do we in our culture embellish? Do we embellish our food? Do we embellish ourselves? How do we embellish? What is regarded as reasonable embellishment and what is regarded as amazing embellishment? An aspect of amazing embellishment to me was when I first saw Mohican hairstyle. A wonderful thing. It took a bit of getting used to, because at first I was afraid of it. And I still would love to go up to somebody and say, tell me about it. You look magnificent. But you see, I don't, because the image is threatening. So embellishment is a very important factor in this. Shelter is another one. Let me see if I've missed any. I know I haven't got them all. Travel. How far do we think is a long way off us? How small is the world to us? In the days of the Iron Age, it was as far as a man could walk before night fell. Or ride, if he had a horse. When I was in Africa, I met a lot of people on things they called walking horses, and it was bicycles. And in the villages, the teachers had walking horses. And the sense of distance, of travel, and so on. I think I've mentioned the ones that sort of matter. So you see, as soon as people say, can we do a play about, I know they've got this fast action. I know I'm going to try and get into these areas, and I will in time. I know I have to entertain. If I want to get deeper, I have to keep on entertaining a bit. If I get a bit of attraction, I can get deeper without having to entertain so much. But where I begin my questioning is from this list here, and it's to do with the behaviour of the children. If beating the bosses and being a bit antisocial is where I think they'll be entertained best for a minute till I drop them in, I might go for war. I'm not going to have a war, but it's, you know, they'll never let people like us try and drive a stake through Dracula's heart. I'll bet you they wouldn't let us do it, and I reckon we're the people that could. I mean, I feel myself to be good enough to risk the devil. You see what I've done? I've gone for war. I've invented enemies who wouldn't ever let us do it, and I've interfered. I've done Paul Freire's thing. And of course, if you're domesticating, you'll go on entertaining the dear little things. But if you're doing the other one that he calls liberating, you're going to push. There. And that, to me, is the process of what, in the end, creates the depth. And you see, children know when they've only had a good time. They know when they've only had a good time. And gradually, the good time gets less. And also, I find, they know that in the long run, because they're in large groups, they do need a bit of adult help. Because I've often, with groups of children who were very capable of working with me on this, when I've said, would you see what happens if I leave you alone and let you get on with it and stop me when you feel you need some help? Now, a really good social group will do that, and they'll run amok quite early, and you'll find somebody coming out, Miss, will you give us a hand? Now, let's have a look at your material, your science project, in these terms of how we might get some depth from the very beginning. Now, when I was looking at your science project, and we've thought of one or two ways, I know, in our other tutorials, one of the things I felt would be quite interesting would be to deal with this notion of the question early man may have asked, which is, where does the smoke go? How does a big piece of timber that I have dragged out, to give me the sort of heat I need, to heat the stones, to put them in the skins so that I may get warmer meat? Where does the smoke go? Now, we took it towards mythology in one of our tutorials. Now I would like to take it to what we might call the half-hour lesson in the hall, just to see, and I haven't thought it through. I'm going to try and think it through with you here. Now, remember our model. We've got, you want to teach the children skills to do with the curriculum or to handle their learning. You're using the drama vehicle. You've got the social health of the class that I've been talking about just now and how deep you can get. And then you've got the actual curriculum area that you're tapping into, and in this case it's science. So keep that model in your mind as we look at this sequencing. Now, I've got to try to get the class into living in a forest and getting them to the point here where the question of where does this smoke go is an authentic question for them. Now, no modern child usually, well, it doesn't grow up with a fire usually, does it? Unless it's an accident. I mean, mainly, children do not see a flaming coals or wood. So I say to myself, what task can I set them off that will start us on this long, long journey that will end up possibly with a myth, but will get me into the atmosphere in terms of science? So let me just think for a minute. I have to create first man in forest, or human, I should say, because, it's girls as well as boys. Human in forest. And I need it to be fairly attractive. Now, I can only just talk my images through, because I would be thinking this in advance. You want a good science project. So you'd be thinking it in advance. You're not going to walk in and say, what should we do a play about? And I think I would start by skinning a big animal. So that would be my first sequence. I'm putting it under work. The reason I think I'd skin a big animal is that I've got a large group of people, and in that culture there would be tasks for the males and tasks for the females. So somehow I've got to agree or get them to realise that it is a formal matter. Women do not do what men do at that time. So you see, I might begin by not working straight away in the expressive mode, but working first in the symbolic mode and saying to them, before we go down to the hall, I'm just seeing whether you could help me. I want to try and get a buffalo sort of flat. I don't know how it would look when a buffalo was skinned. I know it's got, and I might be drawing, you know, 4 legs and a tail, and I don't really know much about buffaloes at this minute. It's got a big hump, and I'm just wondering how it would look flat. Let's go down to the hall and draw a flat buffalo, like a tiger skin rug. So my first task, my first sequence is to get the public buffalo. That's the bit we don't stand on. So I need chalk. I need something I can rub out. I don't want to ruin the hall floor. And carpeted schools are a bit of a problem sometimes. However, chalk is a good vehicle. So we start drawing a buffalo. I'll get a very funny looking buffalo. You'd expect that, wouldn't you? With all you've got 24 children. It'll may have 2 tails at the beginning, but it'll get rectified. Now, this now has to become a buffalo skin. It started as an entertaining chalk drawing, and we've stood back a bit and we've laughed at it and said it's got 1 leg longer than the other, and it's spread out, and does it have 5 antlers, or, you know, what has it got? And now I'm going to start to induct human in forest. So I've gone for work, so I'm keeping that logical. So I say, I'm just wondering, if we could put our drama eyes on, and you and I know this is chalk, you see, you can alienate them all the time. You know very well what it is, and by their will it'll become something else. And I'm just thinking, could I, with my drama eyes, and you see if you can do it, make it furry, hairy. And some will look round because they don't know what to do. It's a because question. Really, you're in that level. It's because it's a buffalo. Because it's hairy. And it's a risky question. But if you don't ask it, you'll have chalk. There's got to be that big thing now, and it's moved straight away from the symbolic to the expressive. See whether, just don't touch the floor, don't touch the carpet, just touch the hair in your mind. And outer roll, you see, did you get any feeling? There's a bit of tail down here. See, if I'm sitting by the tail, I can do it. There's a hoof here. Has anybody found a bit of buffalo-ness in their fingers? The thing is, we've got to get the meat off it, you see. And I'm not sure what they did it with. I'm out and I'm in. Stones, rocks, they had sharp stones. Shall we scrape? Can you find not just the hair now, but can you clean the hair? Not can you find the flesh, it's too complex. Can you clean the hair off? Because find the flesh is ooh. You know, people don't handle hairy animals anymore. People don't skin their own rabbits like when I was a child. It's no good expecting them to do it. Yeah, you know. A lot of children don't see, well, they don't handle so much a joint of meat. It comes wrapped in plastic frequently, or, you know, and their mother's done it then, or their dad's done it. Somebody up there on the tabletop has done it. Because in my time, you weren't sort of shut out so much, playing out. You were helping in a kind of a funny way. So the sequencing starts with draw an outline. Now, that's the best I could do at this moment. When I get the hair, I might clean the skin. And then we might lift it together. And sometimes it'll fall down, you know. I'll say, look, hang on, and I'll go a bit down. I'll try it, I'll interfere. The animal died so that we would have meat. Now that's what I call liberating education. And no way are you going to treat that animal like nothing. But neither am I going to take you back to the classroom because you've been naughty. I'll win that at cost. And I'll laugh and I'll play around and we'll say, come on, let's have another go at this buffalo. For us, the buffalo died. Now, let's move the skin. And now, let us place the meat upon the fire. And I'm guiding, watching for moments when there's a little bit of authenticity. And I can't get tree till I've got the need of fire. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, needing fire comes from eating, needing to warm the thing. That gives us stones that need to be warmed. Carrying stones. I've kept it at work the whole time. I can switch it if I want. I can switch it into worship before the fire is lit. Let the ceremony. You see, if I want, if I think, if they need a bit of a break, if they'd like a procession of carrying the buffalo, okay, I'll do it. Because all the time I'm winning them through partly entertaining, luring, protecting, to win. Nobody in those days killed except out of want and need. And it's need that we've got. So the fire. Now we have to win tree. Not go and fetch some wood and throw it all on, but let us walk to the place where the fire is safe in the forest so that we can light it. So you see, we might go back to our symbolic mode. Let's draw the homes that must not be burned, not the homes we live in. The homes that must not be burned are what matter now. We are going to light a fire. And then we may go back to a bit of expressive mode of, I'm not sure how they made fire. I believe, and people will tell me, was it something to do with bits of leaves and a stick, or did they, but slowly I will talk the making of fire. Now you see, you've thousands of ways you can do it, because you can sit saying, I think this seems a good way to me. What are you doing? I'm moving it expressively. I know I'm asking a lot. And when we get it, there's a chance it might be authentic. What I don't want is everybody to get fire in 2 minutes. Because if I do, I've taught them something badly. You don't get it in 2 minutes. So you see, that's when I might make a negotiation and a contract. I don't know how long it takes to light a fire if you've only got a stick to move, to get the heat, to spark from some dead leaves. We can make it very fast drama time, or we can make it very slow lifetime. Which do you want? And if they say, oh, fast drama time. Okay, I'll talk the fire in real fast. And the men and women sat there and and the twigs were fast in their clever fingers, and we've got it. Because they needed it then. But they need me to talk it through, because that's what'll time it. Interference. Inducting. But when the fire is made, I'll try for something slower. And the fire can be made because I'm staying in work. The gathering of the wood, the knowing of the bark, it depends how deep you want to go. How does a man who lives in the forest look at a log and say, no, not that one, that one? Because those are the skills of the hunter. He's not going to put that one on because the meat will not cook well with that one. That's too slow. And he won't know how he knows consciously, but he will know, and he will choose. And this kind of level is what children get a real zest for. But if I haven't thought it out, or I don't mean thought it out, I haven't had time, I'm thinking of it whilst we're just talking. But can I get a bit of that in? You see, if I'm into curriculum work, as I will be, of course, because the way I am, how big buffaloes are and just how big a hide is something I'm saving up. If I've come into the hall, I can't do it there, but I'll get it back in the classroom. If we're looking at wood, I'm going to look at grains of timber. Because why waste it? All the trees of the forest would be recognised by such people. They would, some of them they would have seen never change in their lifetime. They've always looked like that. I bet you've got trees you know like that. I have in my life. I want children to see trees. I'm not running a forest in order to not let them get an investment in trees. So my curriculum, you see, is coming up. All the grains of wood. The problem these days is to find some proper wood, isn't it?
Yes.
So you can't pretend this is wood. On the other hand, somebody's tried to get the grain right. So I'm saying, how far do I want to venture into an investment into seeing the embellishments in wood, the patterns in wood, any of these aspects can come into it, wood used in worship, but wood just for wood in the eye of the beholder who knows how to make good fires, that will roast a newly raw buffalo for us, you see. And this is what slows your drama down. Now, if we take this a little further, actually it's interesting, isn't it? Because our picture, you see, is full of wood. One of the ones we've used, all that beautiful wood grain there. Now, you see, the next sequence might be to do with, it might be to do with health. It may be to do with law. Because who eats first? And you might move it into formal. Because you see, at this point, they might all slip down and go into fish and chips and prawns. Oh, I'll have 2 takeaways and a what's it? Well, that's okay. Don't mind. Okay, well, I'll have 2 takeaway buffalo tails and so on, and I'll do that for 5 minutes if it helps, in order to say, but our law says only the elders eat first. Or I'm wondering what our law would be. So if I'm asking it at the technical level, I'm wondering what our law would be. Not should be or could be. Would be, because I'm heading for as near as I can. Sort of ancient English, you know, as near as I can. I'm not a historian. And then that's a technical question, a technical level question. If it were at the informal level, I'm wondering what, who we'd have to go to tell us who should eat first, who's allowed to eat first today. Because this is a big buffalo hunt, you know, a special do. Or will it be at the formal mode? There'll be a rule that we'll all know about, won't there? Just wondering what we'd like the rule to be, that we never even question. And you see, they might say, well, the children have to eat last. The old ones have to eat first. No, the chief has to eat first. And the chief has to eat the eyes, or the heart, or the hunters get the heart. Now, you see, I need an anatomy lesson.
Yes.
If I want to take it. I don't have to. I can stay in the expressive drama. And I might draw the heart. I go back to the symbolic, and I might say, let us place the heart then within our buffalo skin. Okay, I've just lit a fire over the skin, but the chalk's still there. So the heart is there. How shall the heart be taken so that the huntsman shall be strong? Maybe where it goes next. And so we build slowly one after the other. And of course I can understand in these days of worry about the curriculum that people might well say, there's knee time, There's knee time. We can't do it. And my only answer, well, I suppose the question I ask back is, why is that more important than what we've been talking about, when what we've been talking about will get you to that? A little bit of time spent here might save you a load of lessons time, because you've now got an entry into wanting to know.
Yes.
If tomorrow the huntsmen have to devise a way to carry this mighty beast, they better know which parts of the beast are strong enough to string up. And they better know how to do it and the weight of it, because we can calculate the weight of a buffalo in maths. Because, I mean, I don't know at this minute how to do it, but I can go away and think, how could I get this so that it becomes a leverage problem? How strong does a stick have to be to carry this kind of weight? Well, I can do that, for goodness sake, with string almost. If I want to look at this calibration between the bending point and the weight.
Yeah.
Would you think?
Yeah.
Well, I would think I could try it anyway. And I would presume I'd got somebody who dealt with maths that could assist me in doing that. Now we come to a further point which we shan't be able to finish today, but I just want to plant it in your mind. Frequently, the drama we are doing in this way involves us in all being of the same frame of mind. We are all hunters, or we are all people of this tribe, this community. We are all engaged in making a fire, and so on and so on. And for this, we need something called conventions. And I'd like to go in a whole new tutorial on that with you, on how you make something be represented in the drama.
Yeah.
You need a buffalo to be represented if we're all hunting it.
Yes.
So it's conventions that we need to look at next. Okay?
Oh, thank you.